welcome back to the show. This episode is sponsored by our friends at Track Farms. I don't know about you guys, but I get very, very sore while I drive, and we have been doing a crazy amount of driving lately. I mean, we just did that big sprint literally all the way across the country and just finished that, and I am just grasping at the very last drops of my CBD tinctures from Track Farms right now. Luckily, I've got a restock coming up, so I'm going to have all types of new products to be trying out. I'm really excited about that. But the funny thing is that that's not how I was about CBD back in the day. When I first started trying CBD, I was just not that interested because I didn't feel a single effect when I had any amount of CBD. And I think that's because I was buying low quality stuff. Track Farms makes some very good CBD tinctures. You know that they're good. They're made by good people. It's a small local farm from Illinois, where my hometown is. So check them out and try out some of these very good CBD products. I highly recommend those tinctures, especially the extra strong ones if you've been doing as much driving as I have. It is track-farms.com/strangers. That'll prompt you to enter the code STRANGERS at checkout. That's going to get you 15% off just for listening to this show. So check them out, track-farms.com/strangers, and use code STRANGERS at checkout. Hey everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Strangers Worth Meeting podcast. Today we're doing another remote episode of the show, but it's only partly remote as I have actually met our guest in person. So joining me today is Mike Galloway from Gillette, Wyoming. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tyler, how are you today?
I am great. I guess I kind of need to give people the backstory on how we've actually met, so they can get kind of a reference point here. So Andrea and I just did the craziest cross-country drive. We went literally from Seattle, Washington to Charleston, South Carolina. I don't know what we were thinking, but that's what we did. So now we're in Charleston, and on our way, we happened to stop at your farm and stayed a night and got to walk around, got to get some fresh food, and we met, and I said, let's do a podcast. So here you are, and we get to talk about all of those fun things today. So thank you very much for joining me.
Well, you're welcome. It's always interesting. You say that you make a crazy whirlwind tour of the U.S. and the nice thing is that we get to sit here in our little corner of Northeast Wyoming, and you guys come to us. You'd be surprised at some of the interesting characters. Your tour, I think, was probably a little bit less eventful than some other people's, but I mean, who knows? It's always cool to see the different folks that come in and out. So I think it's funny that when you're meeting strangers. We're doing the same almost every single day.
I know. I think your way might be a little less strenuous because I have to bounce all over the place, and you just get interesting people right to your front door. And the reason for that, of course, my wonderful sister got us a wedding gift of a subscription to something called Harvest Hosts, which for RVers out there know it's basically where you can stay there's farms, wineries, breweries where you can just stay throughout the country, stay for a night, pick up some fresh food or some wine or whatever it is at that place, and it's quite a nice little program there. So is that primarily how you have people coming through? I also saw that you have some private hunting or
oh yeah, we've got tons of stuff going on. I mean, the bad thing is, we're ranchers in Northeast Wyoming. We raise cows. We have a farm. And the unfortunate part of the whole thing and the way agriculture works nowadays is that you really can't make a living by doing that. And people talk about farm subsidies and they talk about all these other government programs and stuff like that. We ranch, we have livestock. So there's really nothing like that for us. So we had to, at some point, we decided, and we'll get into our whole backstory, I'm sure, at some point. But at one point, we decided that we needed to diversify the way that we make money. And of course, we have the ranch, and we're able to sell calves. We have a cow-calf operation, so we have a breeding herd that lives here their entire life. They're like just a bunch of pets, and they have calves every year. And those calves we sell to feedlots, which eventually enter the food distribution system. But we also have, myself and my kids and Erin, my wife here, and then we have her mom on the ranch. So basically, we're supporting two households off the ranch. And we realized at some point that this isn't going to work. Like we're just digging ourselves a hole. So we said,
Right.
okay, let's figure out different ways to make money. And that's where Harvest Host came into it. That's where YouTube came. And actually, it started out, I started doing websites when we first came to the ranch. And I came from a radio background, so I wanted to do something. So I was doing graphic design and websites and stuff like that. And then eventually we ended up doing YouTube, and then we have a farm store. We started doing farmers markets. Farmers markets came first. That led to YouTube, which led to actually getting away from farmers markets and having a farm on this, or having a market on the store, on the farm, where people could buy stuff. And then eventually that led to Harvest Hosts, who actually contacted us. Joel, who owns Harvest Host, got a hold of us and said, "Hey, you guys have social media reach. Would you be interested in working with us?" And I said, "Yeah, we can give it a try." And at first, I made the mistake of putting my phone number on Harvest Hosts, and that my phone rang all the time. So I ended up switching. It was ridiculous. Like I'm trying, you have to work and stuff, and I'm just like, my phone will
Right.
not stop ringing. So I got a hold,
Yeah.
and we're really the only place in between. If you think about like Rapid City, Mount Rushmore, and Yellowstone, there's not that many Harvest Hosts between there and there. So
Right.
besides us, so yeah, we have guests all the time, which is great because, like I said, we get to meet all these new people. People get to come and check out the farm store, buy local beef, pork, vegetables, honey, all that kind of good stuff. But also, we started a deal, and it was pretty close to when you guys were here that we started doing this. Is we started doing tours in the morning when I was out doing chores anyway. We'd have Harvest Host people that stay here, and usually we have 3 a night is kind of the average, and 3 trailers or 3 RVs a night. And they come with me to do chores, which is something that one of our biggest things that we always talk about is we want people to know where their food comes from, because it's very easy to disassociate yourself from food. And you don't want to think about that my food had a face at some point. You don't want to think about that, but at the same time you kind of have to nowadays. So being able to have people come to the ranch and go with me and do chores and meet the cows and meet the calves and chickens and every rabbits and everything else that we have going on, that's actually a godsend for us, because I mean, people show up here wanting to do that. I mean, I'm not out chasing down anybody with that. So it's really cool, and we get to meet folks like you too. So it's all around good.
Yeah, well, you just brought up so many different things that I'm,
I know.
I'm so
I'm sorry.
excited to talk to you about.
I like
No,
I
it's
like about downloaded you. Yeah.
I think you just outlined sort of some of my favorite parts of what I think this episode will be, because it was all the things we talked about when we walked around and got to do some of those chores with you when we stayed. And so let's start with the YouTube channel, because I know that the YouTube thing. And by the way, the your business there, I don't know if we've even said it yet, is called Our Wyoming Life. That's sort of the brand that you've created there, and
Right.
you've got quite a successful presence on YouTube and social media, because you've been creating videos about life around the ranch and being a rancher, and I was able to watch some of those. And by the way, if anybody needs something just very calming to watch, like, go watch those videos. I don't know what it is about just watching you do chores and talk about what it's like being a rancher. It's just very relaxing. But I wanted to know where the idea to start those videos kind of came from. You mentioned it's sort of about diversifying what you're doing in order to kind of have a different reach. Did you know that it was going to take off and become quite such a big thing?
Oh God, no. So we had done farmers markets. We came to the ranch in 2008, and I'll give you a little bit of backstory here. We came to the ranch in 2008. Aaron and I both worked in broadcast radio. We worked for a company based out of Boston called Northeast Broadcasting, and they had bought 17 radio stations in Wyoming, Colorado, and South Dakota. I had met Aaron when I was out here working with those stations and stuff, and Aaron was working at a local station, and we ended up getting married. And Aaron's mom had married Gilbert when Aaron was in college. So Gilbert was her stepdad. And the year that we got married, Gilbert had a heart attack and couldn't take care of the ranch for the winter. That was the original thought. So they got a hold of us, and they said, we know we got married in June. In fact, our anniversary is coming up here. And we got married in June, and they called us up in October, and they said, hey, is there any way that you could come back and help run the ranch just for the winter? That's all that we need, somebody to feed for the winter, because we can't find anybody to do it. Can't hire anybody this late in the game, kind of thing. So we said, okay, let's take a break. We could, we've got seniority and everything else. Let's take a sabbatical for the winter, and let's go run the ranch. So we didn't even run the ranch. Honestly, Tyler, we came back and we fed cows in the morning, and then I went and watched Netflix all day long.
Yeah.
That's all I did.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so that's what I did for an entire winter. And then next thing I knew, winter was over and we were into calving. And I was like, you know what, we'll let's try this out. Let's keep doing it. And I tendered my resignation with the radio station, and I was a vice president of Western operations, so it was kind of a not really a big deal when I retired, when I quit, but it was kind of a shock to the industry almost, because we were pretty high up, and
What made
we
that before you go on, like what made you switch into that decision? It
you
was
know
just this winter. Did you have just more time? You felt like more connected to
I
what you were
think
doing, or
I honestly cannot tell you. My dad, when I was growing my dad had a stroke when I was 6, but up until that point, he was a professional ranch hand, which meant that he went and worked for different ranches doing different things, whatever he could do to get money. And we moved from ranch to ranch to ranch as a kid. Now, it was up until I was age of 6, so I don't really remember much of it, but I do know we moved a lot. So there was that kind of in the background. I remember my dad passed away when I was young, and I remember when we came here to the ranch, my mom said something to me about, hey, you have your dad's dream job. This was the dream. This was the
mm,
job your dad always wanted his entire life. And I was like,
yeah,
boy, I sure didn't. Like, I had no inclination. I mean, I'd ridden horses and, kind of like done that thing that everybody does. You go to the fair and you ride a horse around and you're like, oh, I'm a cowboy. But that kind of stuff. But I really had no inclination into doing it. I had no draw to it at all. I think that Erin probably had a little bit more because she was from here, and of course now her mom's here, and she's closer to her mom, and I think there was a little bit more draw there, so that might have kept me. Plus, I was a newlywed, so we're trying to keep everybody happy. And we decided to, when we first moved here, we lived in her mom and Gilbert's basement for the first winter, which was fun as a newlywed. And then we moved out to the ranch. Gilbert actually got us a little trailer house out here that we could stay in.
hmm
And so yeah, it just kind of, it almost like it's like slipping into a nice pair of shoes almost. Like you don't know why they feel good. I don't, but
right,
it just something feels right about it. So we decided to
okay,
stay. And we kind of, honestly tell you, I bought a book, and I should be getting kickbacks on this book as much as I mention it, but it's Beef Cattle for Dummies. You know those dummies books with the yellow cover?
sure,
I actually bought Beef Cattle for Dummies. There's one, I didn't know that, but I found it and I was like, oh my gosh, you can find anything on Amazon. So I bought this book, and that book is kind of what taught me, because Gilbert was sick, and he couldn't come out and show me how to do stuff, so I had to learn how to
right,
drive a tractor by myself. I had to learn how to feed cows. I had to learn how to deal with sick cows. I had to learn how to fix fence if there was a fence that was down. Honest, I did do as little as possible. But I had to do some stuff, and I had to figure out how to do it. So then we rolled into calving, and that's when all the baby calves are born, and that was kind of a rewarding time on the ranch, because you're seeing new life come forward that spring, and it doesn't, new calves, and you're helping calves be born, and so that was pretty rewarding. And then and it just seemed like everything I was doing was new and fresh, and I just wanted to experience more. And I think that ties into what we do now. Is I think that's why our YouTube channel and our social media is popular, because people start watching, and then next thing you know, they're I don't know how many people I talk to. We have 300 videos on YouTube or whatever it is, and people are like, I'm binge watching all your videos. And I'm like, you are crazy. Why would you do that? But people do, and I think that's what it is. It's, you get wrapped up into it, and then next, it's calving, and then it's haying, and this is the progression. This is the life cycle of the ranch, and people do get drawn into that. So yeah, it's crazy. And we started doing that, and then my wife was bored. She was kind of bored on the ranch, so she started doing gardens, and she started growing huge gardens. And then we had way too much zucchini than any normal person could eat. And so we said, well, let's do farmers markets. So she started going to the local farmers market, and it didn't take long. And she was running. If you met Erin, you would know this is not unusual, but it didn't take long, and she was running that market.
yeah,
And and then she did that for 10 years. And that's where YouTube came in. YouTube came from farmers markets, because we decided we started doing our own beef. We had all these cows. It used to be they would all go to auction, and they'd leave the ranch every fall. And we decided to keep back a few steers and finish them ourselves, and get them processed ourselves, and sell them directly to people that could have fresh beef directly from the ranch. And so we were doing that. And I made a video in January of 2017. Erin had got me a GoPro for Christmas. And so I said, I'm going to make a little promo video that we can put on Facebook or something. And what we'll do is, like, basically I want to show people, what goes into getting food to farmers market. So I went out and I made, and you can still watch it, it's on YouTube, a 4.5 minute long video about feeding the cows. And I really wanted to make it, because I knew nothing when I came here. So I wanted to make it for somebody who knew nothing about cows and even what they ate. Like I explained, I explained everything and what went into it, a very simple process of just, going out and unrolling a bale. But I talked about, that bale weighs as much as your car, and and all these cows are going to eat 4 of those in one day, that kind of thing. And so we did that, and we put that video online. We put it on YouTube, and honestly, I didn't know anything about YouTube really at that point, and I went to bed, and my phone was dinging, and I'm getting, comments and stuff, and I was like, oh, people are watching it. That's cool. Next morning, we woke up, and that video, within 6 hours, 7 hours, whatever it was, had 25,000 views.
Jeez.
But the weird part was we had 1,500 subscribers to a channel that we really didn't know what we were doing. Like, we didn't even know
Right.
what a channel was at that point. So we had
Yeah.
1,500 people there. Not one of them seemed to be local. They were all over the world. So it was like, okay, maybe we can reach a little bit bigger audience than just saying, hey, it's selling our local meat. That's nice. That helps us. But maybe there's a bigger message to be told here, and that is that's where your food comes from, and where your food comes from, and the families behind it. And we disguise that by saying, experience the ranch life and escape the ordinary. Your ordinary may be traveling around in an RV, and you look at the highway all day, and you look at all these fences alongside the highway as you're driving. You're like, wow, there's a lot of fences here, but I never see any cows, or whatever it may be. But behind every one of those fences is a story. So we wanted to tell our story, and so that's where the escape the ordinary thing came from. Is we have people that watch that are cops, that are firefighters, that are teachers, nurses, whatever they may be. And it's almost like it's funny that you bring up the cathartic aspect of it, because we get that a lot, where people say, I work all day long in an office building, and I come back and I watch you chase cows around, and it's like relaxing to me. And
Yeah, I think there's a few things that
that's where the YouTube thing started.
we're stuck in a an environment where the new work for so many people is to just be indoors all day. Hopefully you're doing something that's moderately physical, but for most people, not at all. Most people, it's staring at a computer, and unfortunately, even a good chunk of my job is just looking at a computer or making phone calls. I'm always trying to take my phone calls outside every chance I get, but even that's not all that doable. And I think we are missing out on some aspect that is really important to just being human, of the ability to work with our hands during the day, like to use your actual labor to create something, as opposed to using your labor to create money, which is a promissory note for something in the future. I think it's really interesting for people to get more connected with that. There's a great book I'm a big fan of, called Shop Class as Soulcraft. That really kind of dives into this subject of this idea of we don't do anything with our hands anymore. We have no concept of what the finished product is of our work, other than the paycheck, which then buys the finished product of somebody else's work. And I think that's huge. And not to mention, we talked about it a little more in person, but when you go to the supermarket and you buy the meat off of the shelf, and you have no idea where it came from, and you have no idea what care went into that animal, and you're so just disconnected from your own food supply. I don't think we're necessarily wired to do that, and unfortunately that's what we're doing. But I also think, weirdly, during this pandemic, that people are starting to notice that as the food on the shelves started to dry up a little bit, and it's like, where is the meat? We actually all kind of had to face, where's the meat coming from, and how is that industry being affected right now. So hopefully right now there's some sort of wake-up call, maybe, to both of these things. I know that you're pretty big on that. The concept of helping people to understand where their food comes from. Is that just an end result of doing this yourself? Is that makes you see how important it is for people to know, where did that beef come from?
There's a rewarding factor in my life. There's two things. So people that watch us on YouTube, we get emails, we get, cards and all kinds of good stuff. And a lot of it we get, that I'm living vicariously through you. We get that a lot. And, whether their grandpa had a farm and they remember, now they may work, for IBM or whatever, but they remember as a kid going and visiting their grandpa's farm. So we're able to bring back those memories, and we're able to allow people to reconnect with their past in some ways. And the other thing is, when I raise beef, and I can say, I can ship you beef jerky that I raised, that you watched actually on YouTube. You may have watched that calf be born. And when you receive that beef through me, it's a direct connection to where your food comes from, and it's a direct connection to our family. So yeah, it's very rewarding to be able to make that connection, and especially now because there's a big thing going on right now in the industry, in our industry, in the agricultural industry, is that we have an opportunity because we right now the meat shortages, the price of corn, whatever you may be looking at, is so bad that people are noticing it now. You know, CNN, Fox News, whatever. It's starting to kind of come to the forefront when people go to the
Yeah.
grocery store and they see no meat. Oh my gosh, what happened? And I deal with it every day. I explain it to people every single day that come through the farm store, through Harvest Host, and you know, everybody's aware of it now. So they may not understand why, and that's our job. So we have to explain to them why you, and we just did a video not too long ago on this, like why you don't have meat in your grocery store. What happened? Like who dropped the ball? Something happened because I've got lots of cows out here that are ready to go, but I can't get them anywhere because we've basically kind of put ourselves in a box when it comes down to federal legislation, meat packers, that kind of thing. That we've built this box that the middleman has basically locked down. So we've got suppliers like us on one end, and we've got consumers like you on the other end who cannot be connected right now because of there's an antitrust suit actually in the process right now because there's basically 4 major meat packers in the United States, and 2 of them are foreign owned. So those meat packers, all of your meat goes through those 4 different companies in the U.S., 85% of it. So if they have some sort of breakdown in there, whether it's through COVID or whatever it may be, that's going to cause a bottleneck, and that's where we're at right now. So we're, as an industry right now, we're saying how can we not monopolize on the situation, but we want to take the situation as a learning opportunity and being able to stay in the forefront of the American people. You know as well as I do that when something passes, we all like to forget. We like to go, oh, well, we got through that.
Yep.
Now I'm back to real life, and we don't want people to forget. We want people to remember what happened. It's all it's like anything else. You don't want people to forget 9/11. You don't want people to forget Pearl Harbor. You want to make sure that kind of stuff, and not that we're on that same level, but using them as an example, that people you want that memory to stay in because. Obviously, if people do forget, you end up right back in the same boat. There's that, history tends to repeat itself, once you forget about it. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's all born out of that disconnection from where the food comes from in the first place. I mean, I think about someone who lives in a city, maybe even grew up in a city, and very rarely has been somewhere else. I feel lucky with my upbringing that I had access to sort of both. I mean, I grew up in central Illinois, so I was very, very aware of agriculture. It was around me all the time. I even grew up summers working in the corn, and certainly had plenty of friends who had farms, although I did not have a farm. But and then I also sort of had access to a city environment, and so I was able to be comfortable with both. But there's so many people who have never. The idea of someone going through their whole life without really seeing a cow or understanding a cornfield, when that's such a huge portion of this entire country, is wild to me, but it does exist. And I wonder if a moment like this, when the beef is not on the shelf, the beef that you typically buy, whether it's good quality beef or not, it's not on the shelf, and it makes you start to wonder, where does it come from? And I feel, of all the things during this pandemic, I actually have felt rather hopeful that people are going to start recognizing some things, and I'm right there with you that I hope we don't forget them. But do you think that there is a growing populace of people who are starting to understand where the food comes from? I mean, I have to think if you're out of beef at the supermarket, but you go to your local farmer's market and you're able to get some, that makes you start to recognize what's happening as just an average consumer. Do you think that this may be a good moment for progress here?
I mean, it could be. It always depends on how open people are for new ideas and new ways of thinking.
Right.
So we've ran into it a few times, and that some people, well, there's no meat on the grocery store. Well, why is that? But it doesn't finish that. Some people don't finish that thought. You know what I'm saying? Like they see that, but then they don't follow through with it. I always tell people to go Google it. Google it. You'll find out why. So when we were talking about 85% of the U.S. goes through those meat packers, a lot of that is actually exported. They can export U.S. beef for more money than what it costs to import beef from Brazil or Africa or wherever. We import beef from 21 different countries in the U.S. So it's actually, they can make money by exporting U.S. beef, importing other beef, and that's a whole nother story about where your beef comes from. Is it actually U.S. beef? 85% of the time, it's not. And
Wow.
I think that lends to the situation that we're in now too. One study that I read said that the U.S. has 2 weeks of beef supply in cold storage for the U.S. So if processors shut completely down, we would have 2 weeks worth of beef in the U.S. before we run out.
Jeez.
And we see that. You can go to your grocery store, and it depends on who they supply through and everything else. I'm sure there's 9
Yeah.
million different things that make a difference on this. But yeah, it's shocking when you go into your store and you're like, wait a minute, why is there no beef in the store? Um, and I see it with other things too, obviously. We had the toilet paper scare, which I really didn't understand that at all. The toilet paper thing was weird because we make toilet paper domestically in Wisconsin or wherever it's made. So
Yeah, that was an interesting one for sure.
I don't know
That was
what
more
happened.
panic and hoarding, I think, than anything else. I mean, I think that was more a matter of news channels saying, "Oh, toilet paper, that's the thing that's gone." But if they had said a different product, if they had said this other product, that's the thing that's gone right now,
Right.
then people would have stocked up on that thing. But I mean, it's an important point. It's an important one to realize. Is I think people's you're right. It's not just sort of an attention span in terms of time. It's an attention span in terms of how many things we can care about in any one day. And I think there's a lot of things that are set up right now to make us try to care about specific issues consistently. And you're supposed to have like 5 to 10 in mind all the time, but they're
Hmm.
also shifting all the time. And so it's almost like we can never get that focus done to fix any one problem because we're sort of just right on to the next that we're worried about. And that is what I hate to see, because any major progress and reform, like dealing with this meat packaging sort of piece of this puzzle, that's going to take a while to fix. That doesn't get fixed overnight.
Very
But we,
true.
we may only care about it for one day.
Yeah, I had a great conversation this morning with a harvest toaster about that exact thing. They said, well, if we can't get meat processed, well, why don't we just go to local processors? Well, for us to be able to sell beef directly to consumers, it has to be USDA inspected. There's only so many USDA inspected facilities in the U.S., and if you wanted to go start up a new one, it would cost you millions of dollars, and you could imagine the red tape you have to jump through to get certified and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like something you can just go set up a tent and be like, okay, let's make some meat. Um,
Right.
I wish you could. I mean, but you can't. But then it's also about a safety issue too. So there are laws that they're trying to push through now. That one of them is called the Prime Act, and that's basically is going to say you can get your meat processed anywhere and sell directly to the consumer, which is great on paper. But then at the same time, there's a safety issue there, right? So they're not inspected. Somebody gets sick, then what happens? Who's liable? There's a ton of different. When it comes down to your food, I mean, you want to be safe with food, and so the answer, who knows? The answer, the answer is, I don't know what the answer is. The problem is that we got ourselves in this situation in the first place, and that's through politics and lobbying and money, and you know how that works. And that's what got us here in the first place. And then something like this happens, yeah, and then it blows up in your face. And I think that food is not sexy, right? There's lots of other issues right now that are in the news that are way more exciting than, man, I'd really love to have a steak you know.
Right.
But at the same time, yeah, I mean, what else is there besides food? I mean, if you don't eat, I mean, that's problem number one: food and water, right? If you got food, water, and shelter, and
Yeah.
we worry about the weirdest stuff, whether if my cable rates are going up, that kind of stuff, and that causes a huge uproar. AT&T's or T-Mobile's network went down, and oh my gosh, you would have thought the world was ending. But
Right. Yeah.
I
We
can't.
forget we forget how slippery that sort of hierarchy of needs actually is, right? Like we just, as soon as we're like, all right, I got shelter, that's all good, seems to be take care of the house is standing.
Mhm.
But now I've got food, and it's always at the grocery store, so I must be good. I must be
Exactly.
fine there.
And
Now
I
I'm
don't
gonna
have
move
to
up to
think
the
about
next
where it
level.
came from. I don't have to think about
Yeah.
how it got to the grocery store. I mean, honestly, I talk to people that, and I don't think people are this naive, but, where does the food, are there chickens at the grocery store? Where's the eggs come from? That kind of thing. And
Hmm.
it's spooky to think that it's just so, and I can attest this because when I worked in corporate radio and I didn't care. Like I never occurred to me. And I knew that Aaron's mom had married Gilbert, who had a ranch in Wyoming, who raised cattle. I knew that. but it just didn't click. Nothing came together, and I never sat down. And I think that maybe hunters have a little bit more. I'm not a hunter, but we do hunting on the ranch, so I deal with hunters quite a bit. They have a little bit better respect to, they know where their food comes from when they're, we have hunters come out here that that pray over an animal after they shoot it. I'm just like, wow, that's amazing that you have that much connection where your food comes from, that you're actually thanking an animal for giving up its life so that your family can eat. And
Yeah.
could you imagine doing that in the grocery store? I mean, walk up and, oh, this rack of ribs. I better, thank this pig, for this rack of ribs. And
I
I'm gonna
think you're
kneel in the
right.
grocery store and I'm gonna pray that thank you for this. Amazing to me but people will do it in the field. And no, but at the grocery store, it's just, put it in the cart. Let's go. We got crap to do. I
Yeah,
gotta,
yeah, because it's just this red and white piece of stuff that turns into something you put in your body, and you have no connection to the fact that there was an actual animal on the other end of that.
exactly.
My new obsession is this show called Alone. I'm very late to the game on this show, where people get sent out into the wilderness and they have to
hmm
survive as long as they can. And what you see with this show is, you'll have someone who sets out a net and they can't go check that net for several days because the weather turns on them or something. They go check it. There's a dead fish in there. They know that fish has already rotted and they were the one that killed it and they can't even use it. And they'll cry. They'll spend a whole day feeling guilty for this. And I just wonder how it changes the mentality when you have to look into the eyes of the animal you're gonna eat, and it makes you so much more responsible. You think about, I don't know. I'm a fairly I'm a fairly responsible consumer. Definitely more now that I really take an interest in cooking. I cook pretty much every meal for us now, and but back in the day, when I was sort of living more average, amount of cooking that I would do, compared to the average person. You'd throw out meat. It wouldn't really bother you other than the money. You'd say like, ah man,
hmm
I wasted that $5 there, but that ground chicken is already done. And now I can't handle doing that anymore. I'm so much more careful because I've had more experiences that make me really think about where that food came from.
Oh yeah.
And but I do have hopes too. I see at grocery stores that the selection of meats, it's going to happen super slowly and hopefully keeps moving in a better direction. Because right, we've got meat that now it's like, okay, now it's good on your meat to brag about being antibiotic free. Okay,
hmm
then you see the meat that is, okay, that's at least grass fed. All right, there we go. We've got to step up. And now you start to see terms like pasture raised that are getting a little better. And now people are starting to label this is from, this state. I think
Right.
slowly we can get there if people are really sort of voting with their dollars on what meat they actually want to be consuming. Um, I have a hope that will happen, and I'm always disappointed when my only option to buy meat is from a Walmart or something. And these days, from what we've learned about meat, Andrew and I won't even buy anything that's at the very least not grass fed. What you're putting in your body at that point is it's just interesting. Not knowing where that beef came from, but so many people don't even ask that question because they are so disconnected from the animal.
Well, and that disconnection plays into the distributors and grocery stores' hands also. They can, if you don't know what grass-fed means, that looks great. But all cows eat grass. Every single cow in the world is
Yeah,
grass-fed.
yeah.
And if you really dig into it, and not that I want to burst your bubble at all, but like 80, a huge percent of grass-fed cattle are actually imported from New Zealand into the U.S. because we don't have the grass here to finish cows. It takes years to finish a cow on grass. Here on the ranch,
Hmm.
we finish with corn, oats, and barley. So
Right.
we're grain finished. So we call our meat grass fed and grain finished because
That makes sense.
if we say grain fed beef, people are like, well, that cow never got to eat grass, and it's like, oh, every cow eats grass, guys.
Right.
So
So wait,
we're
so grain finished, does that just mean right before slaughter, essentially they're fattened up more with
so yeah.
extra grain, or?
Exactly. So you have they eat grass their entire lives. The last 60 to 90 days, I take a cow and or a steer, basically a castrated male, and I take that and I separate him off, and he starts getting a daily ration of corn, oats, and barley. Now he's still eating grass during this time, but
Hmm.
what I'm doing is I start him out really slow. I give him like a pound a day, and he eats that, and then we build up throughout, and we get up to about 20 pounds a day. So he's eating less grass during that time because now he's filling up his belly. But we do it slowly because it can cause all kinds. They can get over protein. There's all kinds of issues that can happen there. But so what that does is that actually builds fat on him. If you notice, if you get grass-fed beef, it's very lean. Like,
Right.
I mean, you can make a hamburger and you're like, where'd the grease go? Why is there no grease in the pan?
Yeah.
Um, so what we do is we feed with corn oats and barley, and we build up that fat. Not much though. We still are very very lean, but we do it does give a little bit of that fat and marbling, which then makes a more tender steak. Grass-fed stuff can be a little bit more coarser or a little bit tougher of a steak. So we do that corn oats and barley to kind of just loosen things up. It puts that marbling into the meat, and just kind of makes that little bit of difference. But we don't go too much, because if you look at like 80-20 um, beef, if it's 80%, 20% fat, I mean that's the stuff that you cook for Hamburger Helper or whatever, and you have to like drain off all this grease and stuff like that.
Right.
And so there's definitely there's all kind, you said pasture raised. Well, okay, so there's pasture raised, free range, all those hot topic kind of keywords or whatever you want to call them, that are advertising buzzwords. And I kind of look at it and I'm like, okay, it was pasture raised. Well, what does that mean? I mean, my cows are on pasture right now. I mean, but that's something that a consumer looks at and says, oh, they're pasture raised. Well,
Right.
where else would they be raised? I mean, they can't be raised in a box. I mean, they have to have access to grass. And now it's different now when you look at cows, and like when we sell the majority of our calves, they'll go into a feedlot system, and that's more of a pen type system where they're still on bigger pens and they're still eating grass, but they're more controlled. They're in a more controlled environment, so they're not out wandering thousands of acres like they are here. So there's if you like those buzzwords and those keywords and all that kind of stuff, like just find out what they mean. Find out what pasture raised mean. And honestly, you should be able to. This is one of our biggest things. You should be able to talk to the person that made that food. And that's why I love farmers markets, and I love the farm store, because you can come in and just from your own experience, like you can ask me any question. You can hold up a steak and say, hey, when did this steak, when was this born? When was it processed? What did it eat? I can almost tell you, was it a good cow? Was he mean? Was he, that kind of thing. My daughter, she's funny. She's 9. We're packing beef jerky to ship out, and we have 3 different types of beef jerky. We have teriyaki, original, and peppered. And Mackenzie says, does beef jerky come from mean cows? And I said, why would you say that? And she said, because it's spicy.
It's spicy.
It's spicy, so that must have been a mean cow. I mean, so being able to connect with your producer, whether it's beef, pork, honey. Honey is a huge thing, and you can talk to people that make honey and where that honey comes from. And you buy local honey, and it doesn't have all that junk in it. And I had a conversation, well, just this morning again. We had some honey out that had started to crystallize. And they said, what's the difference between this honey and the other honey? And I said, nothing, just that honey is crystallized because it doesn't have all the preservatives and stuff in it that might be in the honey that you buy at the grocery store. So educating the consumer is a huge thing. And I think that even comes back to now, even the meat shortages, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, people know there's meat shortages. That's been all over the news. But do people know why? That's the education component of it. And that's where I say, go Google that thing. Don't let somebody tell you what you need to know, because they're going to tell you whatever they need you to know. They're not going to tell you what you need to know. They're going to tell you what they need you to know. And that's news organizations, media, whatever it may be. I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I'll admit to it. We make YouTube videos, and I tell you things from my perspective. So, but once you know what your perspective is, then you can go and research it for yourself, and then you know what you need to know. When I make a video and I tell you how I feed cows, I'm telling you what I think you need to know. But that may be different than what you really need to know.
Well, it's funny because I don't actually think your daughter's all that far off in concept, at least. It may not, I mean, I'm not arguing that a cow's personality would affect the flavor, but I do think that the life that an animal has affects what ends up in the meat.
Oh,
And I
guaranteed,
think
guaranteed.
we definitely don't know enough about it yet, and I really, really hope that research will catch up to this, but there is absolutely no way that there is not a difference between, say, wild game and the nutrients it puts in your system and lot-fed, only grain-fed beef, or even animals that do, you're saying that we can't grow up in a box, but I think that there are cows that do essentially grow up in boxes in some places, and there's no way that there's not a difference in that animal's quality of life that will come through in that food and affect so many things in the human body, like our hormones and the way we react to that. There is just no comparison. And I'm by the way, I'm glad to learn about some of these differences here, because as a consumer, all I've tried to do is just, all right, I'm going to try to do the best thing I can, and
Hmm.
that's not always been as good as it can be. And now I think Andrew and I are kind of at that point of, we had gotten away from going to Walmart for beef typically, and now we're at least like, okay, let's get to a better, maybe a health food store or something like a Whole Foods or a Sprouts or something. And now we're kind of making that next step into, I think that the meat should come from the local farmers markets. And so that's been a push for us lately, is just always trying to take it one step better. And I think it comes down to individuals too. I understand that not everybody has the budget to be doing that. I get that. But the
Hmm.
more that we're able to do it, the more we can actually assure that we will have good food and we're putting good things in our body. I at this point, I'd rather not eat beef than eat beef that I know is coming from rather irresponsible sources.
And
It's
I hear
just,
that all the time. I hear people say, I don't
yeah,
eat beef because I don't know where it comes from. We'll find out where it comes from. Uh,
exactly.
you bring up a good point when you're talking about the animal itself. California hit something big when they were talking about, happy cows in California make happy milk or whatever those ads. Remember those ads that were on?
Yeah. That's kind of their
Huge
new
thing.
push,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Why it
Yeah.
makes sense, right? But I can't make a happy cows make good hamburger because that's just weird, right? But there is. We always tell people that every animal that we raise on the ranch, that we raise from beginning to end, has one bad day. But we want every single
Exactly.
day other than that one to be filled with whatever they need. They have all the food they need. They have all the space they need to move. They have friends with them, And one of the things that people do like about the YouTube channel is that we personalize our cows. We talk about them like they're people. And I think for some people it's a little weird. Like they're like, we have pet cows and we have, and we talk about the pigs and all, but we personalize them and we want people to have a connection to their food, and part of that is having a connection to the animals. And we're lucky enough to have a breeding herd which lives here on the ranch, so we have pet cows. We go out and we talk to Bambi and we feed Bambi and blonde cow and stuff like that. And yes, yeah, we do take their calves, and they get either they end up going to freezer camp, as sometimes we like to call it. But they do serve a purpose as well. So there's a very some people want to ignore the fact that we do eat animals, and we have for thousands of years, and but there's a purpose behind it, and it's not cruel. I think that there's a very easy connection to make with that well, they eat cows, so it's a cruel practice. Honestly, I would love to live the way some of these cows live out here. It's not a bad life.
Yeah, it's nature. We're omnivores.
Hmm.
We're omnivores. This is an animal that we can easily eat, and we do. And when we do it right, it has benefits for our bodies, and you can taste it. People who think you can't taste the difference, I would defy them to try the meal that I made from the food we bought from you guys. So just to give people a little background, so we went into the farm store that first day when we showed up. And by the way, when we showed up that day, there were like what, like 50-mile-an-hour winds, maybe
Oh,
more
it
than
was
that. It
ridiculous. Yeah,
was,
you should be here now. It's beautiful, beautiful.
I'm sure. I know we'll come back at some point and have a less sort of windy experience. We thought we were gonna blow. I mean, I was like falling over when we pulled up. It was crazy. But so we stopped in and we bought some burger patties, which I fried up that night. We put some of those fresh microgreens that you guys had on there, and some of the radishes and everything, and had just an amazing burger meal. Of course, I make the sourdough buns to go with those, which was just delightful. And then we also purchased some bacon, which we tried the other day, and oh man, that is just the best bacon I've ever had.
Really?
Uh,
Wow, thank you.
and the same thing for the steak that we bought. I just made that the other night, made some cheesesteak sandwiches, and just incredible. And you can taste the difference. There is no doubt in my mind, having sort of progressed through the levels of beef here, working my way to get to better and better quality beef. You can just taste it. It just tastes better, and it cooks better, and it just seems right what you're eating. And maybe a part of that is that when you're eating it, you do have a connection and understand where this beef actually came from. I mean, we were eating those burgers, and what was funny is some of the steers had come over to get some water right next to our RV, and I was like, I think they can smell us just eating their cousin right here. But
Yeah.
that's at least we're paying some good respect to what their family members gave there.
I think you're right. I think
With the
there is
meal,
definitely a psychological aspect to it.
for
That
sure.
it may not be the best burger you ever had, but at that time, and being on the ranch and eating a burger that was raised right where you're sitting. I think that's an experience that not many people have ever. I think you're lucky to have had that experience. I have that experience almost every day, but I talk to
Right.
thousands of people who do not have that ability, do not have the capability to do that. And you being able to, actually have a meal that was, raised, grown, everything right here on the ranch, except for your sourdough, which I hope you put the recipe down in the description, by the way. Um,
I'll get you. I'll bring you a loaf next time. Next
there
time
we
we
go.
come out, I'll make sure that I make a loaf for your
Oh,
family.
is it a proprietary thing? Is this like a secret family recipe kind of thing?
Oh yeah, it
Oh,
is
okay.
actually. Although what's really kind of nice is, so I developed this myself over a few years, and my whole family started to get interested in it. Both my parents and also my in-laws, and so I wrote like my complete sourdough guide, but it is very tightly held secret within the family.
Nice.
It's not like the best sourdough in the world. I'm an average baker, but I do think taking pride in your bread is another thing. Like I had a previous episode where I had these amazing sourdough bakers on, and we talked about bread for an hour in New Mexico actually, and it when you can take pride in the food that you're creating, when you make food from scratch and you understand what goes into it, it's the same thing between meat, and it's the same thing with bread, and it's even the same thing with vegetables. It's a different experience when you're eating that food,
I agree.
and it's nourishing in a different way. It's nourishing for your mind in a big way, I think.
We do a farm to table dinner here every year, and basically the entire dinner we have it catered. We have a chef come in, but everything comes from the ranch, and every year the menu is different. And people pay, and it all goes to. We have a nonprofit, so all of it goes to the nonprofit. But people pay, $150 a plate to be able to eat on the ranch, food that was raised on the ranch that they can look out the window and say, wow, that, it's all right here. It's amazing
Right.
to me that because 100 years ago, that was your only choice. And I guarantee you people complained about it.
Yeah.
They were like,
Right.
really?
Yeah.
Potatoes again? I mean, people in Ireland had to be like, I don't know how they don't hate potatoes. I mean, if I lived in Ireland and I lived in Ireland for the last 100 years, I would probably throw every potato into the ocean.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. But when you're living off the land like that, there's oh man, it's so grounding.
mhm.
It's oh man, I it's you know what it really is. It's so hard to put into words, and I knew that that was going to be a challenging part of this podcast for me because that's sort of my job here now is to attempt to put some of these feelings into words. But I just don't know if you can. It's a human experience that unfortunately has been taken away from us, and a lot of people don't even have the access to do it anymore. Just to eat food that you actually know where it comes from, all of it,
Mhm.
every piece of it, and that is absolutely wild.
I think it's a connection that people want to
Me too.
reestablish. I think people deep down they want that, right? And
Hmm.
nowadays we have technology. We have the ability to I can jump online and I can do whatever I want. And why not use technology through YouTube, through Facebook, through Instagram, whatever we can do to let people experience that. And they may not be buying our beef. We sell beef jerky now because we had hundreds of people wanting to buy beef, and it was like I cannot ship with a good conscience. I cannot ship beef to you because it costs more to ship than it costs to just buy it. Right? Shipping is
Right.
outrageous. So that's where we came up with the beef jerky, and we had this whole thing that was like take home a piece of the ranch. Like if you and amazing beef jerky sells like crazy. So people want that connection. They want something. We have another event that we do here on the ranch, which is called the Ranch Roundup, and hundreds of subscribers come from all over the world to just sit here. It's so weird. They just want to come and sit and hang out, and they just see what we're doing, and it's a huge deal. And it blows me away that we last year we had people from 33 different states and 9 different countries on the ranch
Wow.
that just wanted to be here. And just blows me away that kind of thing happens, and people do want to connect to what they do. I have and technology helps with that. Like with the COVID stuff, schools have all been affected, of course. And one of the things that we started up, we used to do a lot of school tours, like our local schools. They'd bring out kids and they'd go through and they'd look at the gardens and they do kind of the same thing that you did the morning that you were here. We had kids come out. Well, of course, with COVID, they can't do that, right? So we started doing
Mhm.
tours on Zoom. We would take the iPad around or my phone or whatever, and I would talk to kids and I would go through. And now we've done that for 1,200 different schools, where they instead of they says they can't go to the farm tours, so we've done it for home schools, we've done it for public schools, we've done it for private schools, and we were able to in real time take them through. And that's one thing that I think that COVID did establish for people, is that you can do anything you want to do. You just have to figure out how to do it. I can go visit a banana farm. I can get a hold of and do a Zoom call with a guy who runs a banana farm and see how bananas are
Yeah.
grown. And that's the cool thing. So we've been able to connect schools with that too. So obviously we're very dedicated to our mission of bringing people closer to their food, and obviously starting with kids is sometimes the easiest way to go, but also adults. I mean, everybody needs to know, and it amazes me every time I get an email where somebody's like, I didn't realize that, or I didn't know that they inject meat with dye in the grocery store to make it look red because people expect red meat. I mean, the beef that
Right.
you got from us, it's not red. It's red tinge, but it's not like bright red, and you see meat in the grocery store and it's bright red, and it's like, wow, that looks amazing. And it's like, yeah, that looks like it's injected full of dye.
Yeah, well, I'm a big proponent of just reading ingredients. I
Hmm.
think that was probably the biggest thing that changed for Andrew and I first was I think the first thing we actually did when we were sort of looking to become health conscious was we just cut out sugar, just processed sugar anywhere we could. And what that means is you actually have to just read ingredients because
Yep.
sugar is hidden in words. It's
Glucose. Yeah. Yeah.
it's a lot of words that just mean sugar. I mean, you can even say beet juice, and
Hmm.
that's pretty much just sugar. I don't actually know if that's fructose or if that's a different type because I know different fruits and vegetables are different, but
Right.
it's just sugar. And so it's those ways that we hide things in the ingredients. And so if you pick up a package of meat and you're like, this is such a great red, healthy color, but then you look and it's like red 40, there it is.
Yep.
That's going to change your perspective on what it is you're buying there.
Yeah.
Um, so tell me about, so you do have a focus on kids here too, and you've got the nonprofit. Can you tell me more about what that nonprofit is?
Sure. So YouTube was very good to us. Obviously, once we started doing YouTube, things started rolling, and before we knew it, we had 100,000 subscribers, and we were like, "Wow, we have 100,000 subscribers. This is amazing." We do get paid from YouTube, which is another income for the ranch, which is great because it takes a lot of time. So if I didn't get paid for it, it probably wouldn't be worth it. But
Yeah.
it takes a lot of time. So we were lucky enough to be able to do YouTube. And if you want to know how much we make from YouTube, we actually made a video about how much we make from YouTube because that's a huge question that people ask. And we're very transparent in what we do. I think that the more you hide from people, um, it's just, the easier it is to hide from people. It's like that thing
Yeah.
you start rolling downhill. So, and I think that's where we got in this where we're at now. People didn't want to know where their food came from, and producers wanted to have this click where we're special because we're farmers, and you're not a farmer, so I don't want to talk to you, which is a real thing, by the way. So anyway, we decided that YouTube was doing really good for us, and we wanted to give back. So Erin, my wife, got together with a friend of hers, Megan worked for a nonprofit. She was a lobbyist for a nonprofit here in our state, and Megan quit her job and joined up with Erin to start this nonprofit called the Edible Prairie Project. And what the Edible Prairie Project does in layman's terms, there's all kinds of nonprofit speak that they've food insecurity and all this stuff that didn't even know what it was, but their basic goal is to connect the consumer with the underprivileged in our community. So if you have a garden and you have an overabundance of zucchini, for example, you can give that zucchini to Edible Prairie Project. They distribute it in the community to needy families. And so what we do right now is this: we do food baskets, like kind of like a CSA type food basket that goes out, and that helps fund the other projects that they do. So. And when you buy a food basket from Edible Prairie Project, you get a food basket every week. You pay, $20, $40, $60, whatever you want to pay for it, and then that all gets rolled back into another project that we do, which is weekend food bags for kids. And what we do is we supply weekend meals for underprivileged kids, and they get a full weekend of meals, and 60% of it is actually sourced from the ranch, so they get vegetables and good stuff rather than what you may get through any type of food bank or anything like that. Nothing against them, but they got to take what they can get. So
Right.
so you get good stuff, and we do partner with some grocery stores. So we do milk and bread and that kind of stuff through the grocery stores that we can't grow ourselves. But then we distribute that through the Boys and Girls Club every weekend, and then that goes directly to the kids who are able to take it home to their parents. One thing that we found, what was hard, is a lot of parents have this weird thing that some people have. It's called pride, and they don't want handouts. But if
Mm-hmm.
you give it to the kids at school, and we don't income qualify, it's just like, here, take this home. Here's a bag.
Right.
Take this home. And you take that home. And if your parents take it and they throw it in the garbage, I mean, I guess that's what they do. But at least it's there, and nobody's asking for it. Nobody's begging for anything. Nobody's asking for a handout. But the kid comes home with a grocery bag full of food. Hey, Mom, look what I got at the Boys and Girls Club today. And they open it up, and there's vegetables, and there's meat, and there's
Right.
honey and produce, and so it's a very non-intrusive way of supporting our community, and um, not making anybody feel bad about it. As a kid, both Aaron and I we came from very low income families. So I remember as a kid going and getting commodities, which was basically a box of food that they would give away every week. And you had the big brick of government cheese, and you had the 1 gallon thing of peanut butter that had all the oil on the top. And
Mm-hmm.
people that know what it is, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that peanut butter. But so we had that. So I know what that's like. And both Aaron and I knew what that was like. So we decided that when
Mm-hmm.
we did it, we wanted to make it a little bit more friendly and not so intrusive, and it's working great. I mean, we don't get a whole lot of feedback because it's very much, it's since we're doing it through kids, they don't come back and say, hey, we ate this, and this. Sometimes they do, and we do get thank yous from parents occasionally and stuff like that. But it's something that we wanted to be able to give back to the community, and food, like we said, it all starts with food, water, shelter, and if you don't have one of those things, it doesn't matter how fast your internet is.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And you have such a diversity too of animals and produce on the ranch too, because we've talked mostly about cows because I think that's probably the focus there.
Right.
But then there were also chickens and geese and
Yeah.
ostrich. I mean, what's the full scope of the ranch?
Well, so I've never actually counted up how many animals we have here, but so we usually run about 150 cows, and so we have 150 calves every year. Of that 150 calves, we keep back about 20, which we finish here on the ranch, and that becomes what goes into the Edible Prey Project, then also into the farm store. We have obviously the chickens. We have about 70 egg-laying chickens, and that's their job. That's all they do is lay eggs. We also do about 300 meat chickens per year, and those we're able to process here on the ranch and freeze them and sell them directly to consumers. We have ducks, which we use duck eggs because if you're allergic to chicken eggs, a lot of times you can eat duck eggs. Some people don't know that, but you can. Not very many people are allergic to chicken eggs, but it's one of those rare things. But
Right.
it can be bad.
If you are, it makes life quite hard.
Yeah, exactly. Then we also have geese. Erin, my wife, really just loves birds in general. But the geese she wanted, and we kind of went round and round trying to figure out what do you do with a goose. Like you can't, a pet goose is just it just walks around and squawks at you. You know that from
Yeah.
experience.
They're
And
pretty loud too.
yeah, exactly. And then we had an artisan get a hold of us, and he said, you have goose eggs, and we said, yeah, they have like laying seasons, usually in the spring and the fall. And he said artisans will pay for goose eggs. So we take the goose eggs and we sell them to people that carve them into really intricate. If you ever get a chance, look it up on YouTube or on Google. Really intricate eggs and ornaments, kind of thing. A very cool process that it would drive me crazy. There's no way I could do it. I break one egg and be like, okay, I'm done. So that's
Wow.
the geese going in that. We have peacocks. We right now we have 3 peacocks. We had our original peacock was actually a fugitive from justice. He was picked up by the sheriff's department, wandering down the highway, and a sheriff's deputy pulled in the yard and said, "Hey, I've got this peacock in the back of my car." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" Went look, yeah, he had a peacock in the back of his patrol car, and he said, "I know Aaron likes birds." And he said, "Would Aaron like a peacock?" And I said, "I don't know. I'll call her and ask her." So, of course, as soon as I said peacock, Aaron was like, "Yes, yes, 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 yes." And
Right.
and so we had to go to the animal shelter and adopt this peacock. And he came out to the ranch. He lived here for years and years and years. He actually, when he got older, peacocks roost. They don't really like go in at night. In the wintertime, they just roost up in barns and whatnot. And he got frostbit on his leg, and he ended up losing a leg. And we were doing YouTube by that point, and I made a video about the one-legged peacock. And next thing I know, I had people coming out of the woodwork that were talking to me about 3D printing him a prosthetic leg. So I said, sure, let's give it a try. And somebody
Whoa.
sent me a prosthetic 3D printed leg. You can look it up on YouTube. If you look up, I think if you look up one-legged peacock, we'll pop right up. I think we're right there at the top. And they sent me a 3D printed leg, which we then strapped onto him, and he walked around, flew around, did his whole gambit with it. Big pain in the butt though was that I had to take it on and off every night, and make
Oh
sure
my
that
gosh.
it didn't chafe and all this other stuff. It was a really high maintenance peacock. He passed away after about a year of dealing with that. And then we got some new peacocks, and they're getting accustomed to the ranch now because peacocks can fly. They're actually in a big chicken run type thing. It's a big fenced-in area and with a top on it, so that they can't fly away because they can just up and leave. So that's that we've got going on. We have pigs. Right now we have 14 pigs that'll be ready in about 6 months or so. When they right now they're tiny. They're what, 20, 30 pounds, and they will weigh 260 pounds when they leave the ranch. We have one pet pig that's kind of our pig babysitter. He's a runt from a previous litter, and he kind of he doesn't do anything really. He just lays around. But he's kind of he's an adult. He's adult supervision, I guess. Maybe, don't know. More of a mascot at this point. And and then we have horses and steers, of course, that are we're finishing at this point. So there's always a little bit of something going on, and there's always plans for something else. We've looked at doing like a milk cow, but really with the success of the YouTube thing and how busy it keeps me, and it's kind of funny because we started out YouTube and it was all about the ranch, and I worked on the ranch every day, and the more popular that we become on YouTube, then I've got people that want me to do speaking events, and we've got sponsorship deals and all this other stuff, and I find myself I'm sitting in the office more than anything, and it's like you kind of have to break away and say, okay, I got to put all this stuff down and be able to go and actually just drive a tractor and make videos, which I have to do anyway. So it's interesting to see the way the ranch is evolving through this. There's been talk of goats, just all kinds of stuff, and a lot of it comes down to time, and what we're able to do. We don't have an employee on the ranch, so that's something we're kind of looking at. It's hard to find somebody that can do it all. I need a personal assistant that knows how to drive a tractor, that can fix fence, but can also take pictures for Instagram and can edit
Exactly.
video. How do you find that person? That person doesn't exist. So
Right.
it's kind of an interesting thing trying to balance it all. But so far we've been able to do it, and it's been fun.
Yeah, I'd apply for that job, but I've got some other things going on at the moment.
Your
Just
commute
can't
would probably kill you
be
too.
tied down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably would out from South Carolina. Gosh, I'm not planning to do that drive again anytime soon. I can barely move right now. I don't recommend it. It was nice to be able to stop and see some cool things on the way. I mean, we stopped in Montana and did some camping. We stopped with you guys out there in Wyoming, and then we had a few other stops on the way. That made it bearable. But man, it's a big country here. And maybe that's a lesson from this episode too, is like get out and see some of it, because if you just leave the city for a minute, you are likely to come across a farm. And if you do a little homework, you may find a place that you can stop in and get some really good quality meat and meet someone like you and try to understand where it is that your food comes from. I think that's such a key thing and such a great message, hopefully, that people kind of can take away from the episode. So let's share with the people where they can go to find you guys. So it's Our Wyoming Life. That's the handle on Instagram, right? And then
It's a handle on everything. If you search Our Wyoming
yeah.
Life, you'll find us on pretty much everything: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, of course. Our website is ourwyominglife.com. We're pretty consistent with our branding across the board. It's amazing if you do start, if you start down that road of following us and you really do care about where your food comes from, you're going to find yourself in a community of people that are the same way that you are. We have a Facebook page that's called All Things Agriculture, and that's something that we set up a few years ago that people can go to. And one of the great things you can do there is you can go there and say, there's thousands of members, so you can go in and say, hey, I live in upstate New York. Where can I find a local producer? And I guarantee you somebody's going to answer you and say, hey, call this guy. It's amazing. And so we've built this community and this network around Our Wyoming Life that we never really expected to build. And I know that some of them are going to be listening because I'm going to share your podcast with them. And I would like to say that it's amazing that these people have come and not only support us as a family on the ranch and us up here in Northeast Wyoming, but also as an industry. And that's one thing that I think that you can support your local rancher, but also pay attention to what is happening elsewhere and what's happening in the industry, because it is your food. It's your food, and where it comes from and how it's made. It affects you and your family, and that's why I get so upset when people are talking about farmers that are doing things that are shady or maybe against personal beliefs or whatever. But like, I feed my family the food that I raise, and there's no way that I would put my family
Right.
in jeopardy. I won't put yours in jeopardy.
Yeah. Well put. I think that's true. All right, so go and check them out, and maybe pick up some beef jerky, because they're shipping beef jerky and among other things across the country. That's some very good stuff. I am hoping that maybe Andrea has a picture of me from our farm tour that I'll be able to post. So if anybody wants to see what I'll come up with there on Instagram, as always, it is at @THicksonLife, and also on Twitter at @THicksonLife if you want to reach me there. We are going to be doing a lot more traveling, and so I am just going to see what comes next. Just like always, I'm always surprised by this show, and I'm always looking forward to bringing you all the next episodes. So thank you to Mike for being here. Thank you to everyone for listening, and as always, we'll see you on the next episode.